This is where we've taken off the sole. So you're seeing the underside of the sole, the convex shape of the sole, as opposed to concave. You're seeing the convex surface, which fits like a glove into the concave surface of the dermis, which is located at the bottom of P3. Okay. These are the ends of the palmar processes back here just before you get into the bar. These little tiny projections, because we've just taken the sole off. These are all of the papillae. All of these are individual papillae, tiny little things. And you can see there they are, all these little tiny papillae. Now there's papillae that create sole, and they're all around the sole. Then they change. Look how it changes. It's contiguous, but there's a change. Mother Nature is so super clever. And then all over this bit here, which is what we know as the frog stay, this is where the frog dermis lives. Now this part here is covering the digital cushion underneath, the white mass of the digital cushion underneath, but this is where the frog horn grows from. It may not feel that you may not see it as horn because it's rubbery, but it's still horn. It just isn't hard horn. And as you can see, there's no real defining line. One just goes into the other.
Merges, doesn't it?
It just merges. It stays contiguous and it's always in the same position. And if we go over to the actual sole itself, and that black there, that's just pigment, so don't worry about that. And we zoom in to the sole, we can see all these hundreds of little tiny holes. And each of the papillae I just showed you there, those finger-like projections, sit in these holes. And from there, that's where sole horn is created. Now, as you see, we get that contiguous, that continuous change as we start to move into the frog area. And there's all sorts of little holes down there too. As we get further and further down, there's holes all over this. And that's where the frog is. That is the frog that you're seeing there. You're seeing the underside of the frog, the underside of the sole and the underside of the frog. They are completely linked. You don't pull the sole off and leave the frog behind, and you can't pull the frog off and leave the sole behind. They are completely linked. And that is really important when understanding rotation, because if these are linked and P3 loses its suspension, which is what Pollitt said, with the hoof capsule, and it begins to rotate, then it has to take the frog with it. But the frog is stuck solid in the sole, right? Because it grows from here. And the sole is stuck solid to the bottom of P3. Wherever P3 goes, its sole goes with it. It doesn't detach. Those papillae live in these sockets. So if P3 rotates, the sole rotates with it. It is a literal impossibility for this bit to rotate independently of this bit. And I really don't know why that's never really been thought about. But hey ho, that's where we are. So therefore, if P3 is going to rotate and it has to take the frog with it, what's happening to the frog? Is it moving in the sole? If P3 is rotating independently of the sole, is of the hoof capsule, because that's what they're saying, right? Is it moving with the frog, without the frog? What's going on? Because you'll always find the tip of P3 just in front of the frog. You always find the tip of P3 just in front of the frog. So just remember that for a moment, and then let's whiz over to this. This is a normal, natural foot. the horse is starting to lean forward as this x-ray is taken, but this is a lovely, ordinary, nice, happy foot. You've got toe wall on the ground, you can see the thickness of the wall coming down, and it's steady all the way down, and the toe wall is on the ground, not walking on the sole underneath P3, and the heels are nice and low where they should be. Now I took the bone and I moved it. Look, wee diddly-dee. Look at that. It's in there. And I said to Gary, let's rotate it. Now they think that this can happen overnight. You better get that horse into a stable because this is going to happen overnight. Now hang on a minute, because I've just shown you this. This is connected to this. So how is that rotating with or without its sole? If they're saying it's going without its sole, so what's happening here? Is the sole detaching? Is everything detaching? No, that's not what's happening at all. If it is rotating, what's happening to the frog? Because the frog stays in its constant position to the dermis, which is surrounding the bottom of P3. So as you rotate it, what are we seeing then? P3 going back in the hoof capsule, back along here in a hard sole. Are we going to see it coming backwards? Of course you're not. Of course you're not going to see it going backwards. When you have a foot like this and you have the frog, which is about here, and I'm going to show you that in a moment, all of this is in a constant position. It's balanced. You've got an extensor tendon here, a DDF here. You've got lateral cartilages all around the back because there's horn back here, folks, but no bone, look. And that's because that's the lateral cartilages that the laminae at the back are growing from. So my question would be, how the bloody hell does P3 do that in a balanced hoof capsule? And yet we have diagrams on the internet showing P3 like this, and the heel bit doesn't change. There you go. That's what you see. So let's just zip over to this one here. This is like Blue Peter, one I prepared earlier. And I've put the frog in now, that bloody great big blue arrow, you can't miss it. So let's just rotate P3. Right. Well, as we know, the frog is attached to P3, so this cannot be happening, can it? Absolutely cannot be happening, because the frog's not going to stay put when it is attached to the bottom of P3. So let's just rotate those together. There we go. The frog's moving as well as P3. So is it moving back in the hoof capsule? Did we go and set up time-lapse photography overnight so we could see that frog shooting back in the sole? Of course it didn't move. Of course it didn't move. The truth is, this is what happens. Now there's another capsule with another P3 over the top of it. And over time, they changed the plane of that capsule. And frog, look, it's still in the same position to the bottom of P3. Because remember, the dermis is in the bottom of P3. The sole grows from the bottom of P3. Now, once upon a time, this too was a balanced hoof capsule. But what happened over time is they started taking the toe off. And as they took more and more toe off, the heel grew. And as the heel grew, they took that horse off its natural plane. And then this is what happened. So as you can see, P3 is not moving independently in the capsule. The capsule is taking P3 and, of course, the frog and everything. Nothing is moving anywhere. Everything is still constant. All that's happened is that the heels have gone up and the toe's been removed. And then the plane shifted. Then the plane shifted. So if we then just do this, you can see, can't you, why they think P3 is simply rotating in the capsule, because they haven't worked out where the original heel was and where the compaction in the back of the foot is. Okay, so let's just go back. Let's look at this again. Let's keep the frog with it, because obviously the frog cannot move, just like P3 can't. And there's your balance change right there. They removed the toe and they allowed heel to grow. Well, obviously, when a horse puts his foot down, he's not going to put his foot down like that. He desperately wants his foot to be like that. Hence the reason you see horses that are suffering from rotation and separation and bloody awful pain in the foot leaning back. They lean back because they're trying to get P3 in the right position. That, my friends, is a trimming error. And then you've got an imbalance. And that happens all the damn time.